We're finishing with the most challenging week for most secondary teachers. We're talking about differentiation and diversification of classroom activity on a level that challenges each learner to reach their potential while utilizing the teacher as the most important resource in the room. In the video you just viewed, you saw Mr. Cornell engaging in a small group conversation with students about their model of electronegativity trends. This is what we'll call instructional conversation. I'm betting this short example of instructional conversation seems familiar. In fact, because you're a science teacher used to questioning student groups, you might not think much of what's going on. This might be the norm for activity in your classroom. The students engaging in collaborative work while you, the teacher, engage in short instructional conversations with one or more groups. But what the research shows is that in diverse classrooms, this sort of interaction is critical for learning content and language. Even though we saw Mr. Cornell speaking to a group of students who seemed to already possess the academic English skills necessary to fully participate in a challenging science class, Mr. Cornell's conversational style seemed to probe the boundaries of the student's language, sometimes coming in at a higher academic register with phrases such as increasing electronegativity. At other times, the language of the teacher comes in at a lower academic register. The atoms are wanting more electrons. By participating in conversation within a higher academic register than they would otherwise be capable of producing on their own, the students end up co-constructing a deeper understanding and broadening their ability to use academic language. The research on what works with diverse student populations shows us that instructional conversation is a key component of academic language learning. When we're using instructional conversation, we keep the group small, 7 students or less, inviting all to participate. We set the learning goal, but we don't dominate the conversation. The majority of the talk is by students. By questioning, we push the students to make their thinking clear. And by rephrasing and modeling academic speech, we raise the academic register. Whole class discussion or lecture, while efficient, doesn't have the same effect, especially when it's dominated by teacher talk, or when students have limited opportunities to produce language. Independent student groups can be a powerful place for learning, but we can't expect the same degree of exposure to a higher register when it's only the students. But when teachers and students have prolonged opportunities to engage in small group discourse around a specific idea or a science and engineering practice, language and content learning are accelerated. There's one obvious constraint here. The most important resource in the room is in very short supply. In most cases, there's only one teacher, one content expert in the classroom. Aside from inventing a technology that will allow us to be in more than one place at once, we have to be very smart about how we plan. In order for all students to experience the power of instructional conversation, we need to organize our classrooms differently, both in terms of the space and time. I like that. I think I'll rename this module from secondary science to, how about this, transforming the space-time continuum. In all seriousness, we're talking about a real transformation of the traditional classroom model. We're talking about having students work in independent groups for a large portion of the classroom, freeing up the most important resource in the room, the teacher, for extended instructional conversations with small groups. And recall from the learning in the previous unit that these groups can be arranged in a number of different ways. Sometimes a teacher will meet with a primary language group, taking time to make sure that all students understand the content, regardless of English proficiency. Or a teacher could be helping with one or more heterogeneous student groups, creating incredible engineering solutions, questioning them on the fundamentals of the science behind their solution. Or a truly linguistically responsive science teacher will have an instructional conversation with different second language groups, planning a conversational task with language demands in just the right zone for optimal learning. Maybe you're seeing the possibility here. A lot of teacher candidates and new teachers I've coached question this. Can secondary students handle the independence needed for differentiated classroom activity? Sounds like chaos. To this, I usually point to what is going on every day in great elementary classrooms. If you're a high school teacher or middle school teacher, these may be long forgotten, but a visit to the classroom of a master elementary teacher will show you diverse students engaged in multiple simultaneous activities from a very young age. While a small group of students works with the teacher, some students are independently reading, others are at computers, and others are collaborating independently at a center to produce an assignment for their peers to try out. As someone who spent the majority of my time teaching secondary school, it's an awe-inspiring sight. You might already have these same activities going on in your classroom. One day, all your students are doing a simulation on computers. The next, they're collaborating to analyze data. And the next, they're watching a video and writing a response. The challenge is to look for opportunities to transform the space and time of your room to allow students to rotate through different activities, some independent and some with you, maximizing the time spent in extended academic conversations with the teacher. Of course, this isn't always possible. Some days you need all your students on the same page. And believe me, I know the management of a classroom where multiple activities are happening isn't something you try on day one. Successful transformation involves a steady building of classroom culture focusing on success. To help create a vision of this classroom, we're going to finish this week's Explore watching 2 short videos of classrooms using multiple simultaneous activities and instructional conversation. In the first video, Spanish teacher Nancy Hagstrom will set high expectations for her students, giving them challenging work along with clear expectations for when students will work independently. In the second video, featuring science teacher Jordan Wolf, we'll see a lot of project work and a lot of chaos. In many ways, we can see all the elements of this e-workshop come together in one short summary. Students grapple with the high challenge of science and engineering practices. Students' many language backgrounds are welcomed, and students are encouraged to position themselves as scientists. While whole class activity is present, high-level questioning leads to student talk in many languages. Students are flexibly grouped, and the teacher pays attention to language assets in the group. Finally, by engaging students in challenging project work, the teacher is able to have productive instructional conversations.